Hello. Today the topic is, or the question is, will US remain a superpower, a global superpower? And currently they are the only one on Earth. And bear with me, this video might take a little bit longer than usual, but there's so much stuff to be said. Let's start with population, because nations are made of just people. There's nothing else within, right? And when it comes to the US population, the average age is still a great advantage for them. So just looking at the numbers, in 1960, the average age, the median age was 29 years old. Then in 2020, it was 38 years old, and in 2050, 41 years old. So in less than a century, they are expected to gain more or less 10 years on average. So a very young population. And why is it important to have a young population? Because young people are, in general, more prone to violence, more prone to disrupt the status quo, believe in ideals, be involved in changing the world, or in other context and with the right stimulus to fight. Elderly tend to privilege and protect their Mercedes. So the status quo, that's it. So that's why it's so important to keep the average or the median age very, very low. And of course, being younger means that you can produce more, you last longer, and so on, even though, of course, you pay the price of a lack of experience. But when it comes to be a superpower, what you need are really, soldiers, a lot of them, and a population that is ready to last sacrifices that an elderly person might not be willing to deliver, to support. Then, population, US, there's a lot of inequality. I really had to change my mind because back in the day, I always tend to look at this matter as, as a European. So we are a colony of the empire. They are allied, okay, we are allies, but we are just colonies, But when it comes to the population at the center of an empire, so at the top of the empire, inequality is very important. Why? Because inequality creates sources for military employment. So the typical, black ghettos in, Chicago, Detroit, and so on, they are really, really important because the military, all the different branches, take a lot enroll a lot of persons out of those very problematic zones. So in other words, your life sucks, just take the rifle and probably this guy on the other side of the globe said something against your mother. Why don't you just teach him about the American lifestyle? Even though things are slightly changing, because in 2022, this is projected to be the first year when when for the first time the recruitment target will not be matched. So things are changing. Having said all of that, the population is still great when it comes to the US. And then I mentioned the fact that violence is really important. Everybody knows that if you are in the US and you see two guys arguing, you better go the opposite way, because chances are that one of the two, or maybe even both, carry a gun, and the situation could escalate in a very dramatic way in no time at all. And when it comes to sources for the military enrollment, it's not about just the guys who who are already there, but you also have to import for different reasons. Again, the workforce must, be enlarge depending on the different needs. But here we are just focusing ourselves on the military branches. So you can import also from outside and not just from, the ghettos in Chicago and so on. Mexico, in this case, represents a very important strategic source to keep the population young, to have a lot of immigrants, illegal immigrants. But at the same time, Mexico poses a threat. So the fact that, if you have guys coming from, I don't know, Jamaica, the very south of America, or even, I don't know, Europe, Africa, and so on, they tend to be quite detached from the origin. Okay, but when it comes to Mexico, it's just over the border. You can see it. So grandpa and grandpa and grandma are just there, and that's why it tends to be very entrenched, rooted into the apparatus, the idea of continuing building up the wall, because it's a physical barrier to separate the grandsons from the grandparents. And why is this so important? Because US, like every other empire, really foster assimilation. Now, assimilation is not integration. Integration is what we do in Europe. So it's just about receiving a person and just say, look, it's fine who you are, what you believe in, we completely respect you, so it's fine. You are you, and I'm a different person. Assimilation is something slightly different. Assimilation is about the Stars and Stripes flag in the church, unbelievable in Europe. Assimilation is about pledging allegiance to the flag at school. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States and so on. Assimilation is cultural violence because it's about putting your new community above everything else. Then yes, you can stay who you are. But in principle, first, you recognize that you are an American citizen, and then you are something else. So first, this was population, an overview of the population. Then there is another key ingredient, imperial fatigue. What is this? Staying at war, in a constant state of war for decades and decades is really stressful. It costs a lot of energy, casualties, death, mental illness. So even though a soldier might come intact back home, probably post-traumatic stress and other diseases are already affecting this person, and the society will take care of this person as a veteran for the rest of her life. And then, so you really have to stay constantly vigilant and alert, supporting the war effort. Another reason is that you, as the center of the empire, must create dependency on the colonies. In other words, structural trade deficit. Trump was used to refer to that. Probably it was something around $400 billion a year, and this was seen as a gigantic problem. Yes, it is, but it's not really. Why? Because you have to create dependency. So the fact that your colonies export to you, the center of the empire, gives you a great power. So, for example, that's why the US dollar is still considered the world reserve currency. But it's not everything, just good as that. Because if you import, it means that you're not producing this stuff, these goods and services by your own anymore. Typical example, the automotive industry. Yes, they're still producing Ford, Chevrolet, you name it. And yes, there are tariffs that tend to prevent other, car manufacturers to just, show up in the US. And yes, of course, you have Tesla. But at the end of the day, the reality is that when you go around in Detroit, so the Rust Belt, you really see what I'm talking about. And this is one of the main reasons for the MAGA movement. Trump, in other words, all these guys who had paid the effort of being the empire without really getting anything else in return, other than the possibility to look at yourself as the word dominant, which it's great, but at a certain point, if you don't have a job, probably this is it's not gonna last forever, okay? And you might ask for a change. Imperial fatigue. Then geography. What is really cool, and this is the last point, is that US live on another planet. They are not in Europe. They are not, if you think of, Germany is in the middle of Europe. China, is really positioned in a bad way, because there is India in the south, a lot of stan nations, but in principle it's Russia, and then there is Japan right over the coast. So it's not so easy for China to expand in any direction. But when it comes to the US, they are completely dominant on their continent. In fact, you typically refer to it as America, okay? Even though America is the continent, it's not the United States, but you can just say America. And they are surrounded by two very large oceans. So that's why I'm used to say that they live on another planet. And when it comes to choosing to become the colony of someone else, the strategic grammar tells you that you should always look for the center of the empire, which is the most distant from where you are. Because at a certain point, this empire will just collapse. It will not have the resources, the capabilities to reach you out. Example, you are in Asia and maybe you're Japan, and you have to decide between US and China. Of course, you're going to choose for US, because China is there. US, it's on another planet. Then, of course, many exceptions might be listed, and probably I'm gonna record a video on that. And even when I refer to Japan, it was just because it's super well known. But Japan has also by its own imperial roots, so it's another thing. But I just wanted to give you a very easy to be understood example. So from a geographical perspective, they are really in a great position. Plus the fact that the American continent has plenty of resources, so they are theoretically independent from an energetic perspective and raw material perspective, more or less forever. So in conclusion, will US remain a global superpower? Yes. That's the answer. Yes, for decades and decades, not forever, because every empire, tends to collapse at a certain point. But yes. And another thing that you have to consider is that you cannot you cannot retire, from being an empire. Because it's like a really bad guy, a mafia guy, who could not just say, okay, I'm retiring, so sorry, maybe I killed your mother, I killed your son, but it's good, right? I'm just retired. The same applies to empires. You cannot really decide to retire, because everybody else wants to reach you out and regulate the different regulate what you have done in the past. So it's not easy for US to just decide to stop being the sheriff of the world. But on the other side, the fact that they also have this schizophrenic approach. So sometimes, and this is across their entire history, sometimes they are very open, they are imperial, they are the sheriff of the world. In other times, they tend to be more isolate, so it's isolationism, like Trump wanted to be, even though he couldn't. Because again, if you are an empire, you cannot really retire. It's just as simple as that. So in the future, they will have to really go through hard times, defining who they are as a nation, because they are still very, very, maybe even on the brink of a civil war. But at a certain point, they will have to stand behind very few principles, because the moment will come very soon, likely by 2049, to have a massive confrontation with China to decide who's gonna be the big daddy in the world. And maybe in the end they're just gonna split the power, which is even better, because one of the reason of the imperial fatigue is that back in the day you had Soviet Union and US, and these two acted as leaders of the world. So the world was just divided, and they had spheres of influence. Now, after the collapse of the Soviet Union, the US remained the only superpower, and this is really a bad thing for them, because it cost a lot, but for the world, because at the end of the day, US really lose the track and miss the idea of sharing the power, sharing the leadership with someone else. It's like a check and balance. So sorry for the very long video. I hope that you find that very interesting, and thanks for watching. Take care. Bye.